at this point, there is no information where I'm like, that's absolutely insane.
If I can make one change, I would love for humans to be able to perceive intention as clearly, non-overwhelmingly as we can perceive light.
And just like, how do we help each other through this to get to the other side?
Be the end game you want to see.
Hey everyone, welcome to What If It's Possible. I'm sitting down here with Light Stone. And for anyone who's new to the show, this is a show where we're going to be exploring a lot of ideas, stories, a lot of different conversations that really stretch what we believe about healing, about humanity, consciousness, relationships, creativity, power, and the future that we're all really here to build together. And I can't think of a better person to talk about all of this because Light here is just at the intersection of all of it, essentially. Lightstone, just to introduce, he is a human excellence coach, which means he's also an author, he's a performer, speaker, and also a podcaster and an occultist. Very interesting. I'm going to ask so many questions about that. His work really centers around the phrase, power is a love language. And it's really powerful stuff. You're focused on embodiment, nervous system capacity, trauma, discernment, and also bringing your own background of fitness and wellness into the mix. It's really nice to have you here, Light.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And I've heard a lot about you from several of my other friends. You've been on a couple of their podcasts, and everyone speaks very highly of you. And they've all said, "Oh, I think you're going to have a really great conversation with this guy." So I've been looking forward to this. So thank you.
It's going to be so fun. I'm really excited. Just so I get a full understanding, and I'm sure the audience wants to really know also, what do you do with like the clients that you meet with on a one-on-one basis? Like what usually comes up, or what is your methodology? What does it look like?
Yeah, I primarily work with millennials. So I'm 41. So usually millennials, sometimes Gen X, and sometimes Gen Z too. And usually people in some sort of C-suite capacity, either founders or entrepreneurs, usually who are already doing well in their life, but they're rubbing up against either some sensitive spots inside of themselves or some ways in which they know that they can kind of excel even more. And usually they have to look back into their past, some sort of unhealed wound, some sort of childhood trauma. I specialize in a couple different versions of that with PTSD. I work with a lot of veterans and who are also, business owners. Childhood sexual trauma is something that I specialize in as well. And then substance abuse and addiction. And we then take that as a catalyst, basically as fuel, which they usually have already been doing. I also have done this in my past, so I speak from experience here of how to then leverage that to then excel even further and even farther. I have an entire series of protocols built on my own life experience and then what has worked well with other clients. I also leverage the legal and judicious use of psychedelics to help us heal our central nervous system. I love fitness and meditation, yoga and martial arts as well. And so I try to take a multi-pronged approach on basically how can you be even more excellent. Usually most people that I work with are doing well. I also work with another subset of population, people who are doing really not very well. And these are people sometimes with CPTSD, really extreme substance abuse problems, sometimes really extreme childhood sexual issues that they were perpetrated against and are trying to now overcome them. And so those are the two primary groups that I work with. I then also have sometimes just like fitness clients who are like, dude, like you're jacked, bro, like get me jacked like you. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm happy to help. So that's kind of the range of people that I work with. And then also leveraging psychedelics as well for more of kind of a spiritual, psycho-spiritual, emotional, mental, not even necessarily healing, but that too, but just having some sort of personal awakening. I'm trying to find greater meaning and trying to understand, like, not to be explicit, but like what the fuck is going on this crazy ass planet of ours and how can they be, a better person and a beacon of love and light.
Wow. It's essentially, you're helping to turn everyone else into you now, like with all of your experience.
I wish I was like a finish, like you put me up on a pedestal somewhere and just be like done. I am still very much on that journey as well. But yes, I'm trying to leverage the healing that I've had and made that available. A lot of it's like, I say to like a lot of my younger clients, like I have been through certain trials and tribulations and you don't have to now because I can just like give you my crib notes and you can kind of like cheat off my exam. So you don't have to have these life experiences.
No, I can really relate to that. It's, you're kind of turning your healing into like your own medicine that you get to give out to others. It's really, really cool because I feel like that goes both ways. You can either sit in like the victim mentality of like, oh, it's this way and this is the way it is, or you can like change it up and change your life, change careers, excel more, become jacked like light, I'm probably going to call you about that. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
please.
So when someone is looking for this like new excellence, how does someone know that they're not already even in like their best place? Like how do they know they can even excel further rather than just be where they're at and this is like their full potential already?
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really interesting question. So for someone who's experiencing some sort of like really serious trauma, that person will know that they need to make a change because they have a high degree of like discomfort in their life. And so that's pretty clear. We then can look at that as a spectrum. Some people may have a medium amount of discomfort or a little bit of discomfort, and that's totally fine. Other people just may want to, be stronger, make more money, have better relationships, whatever it is. I try to approach wherever someone is. Usually they go to a coach when they're trying to achieve some sort of goal. So it can be goal oriented. I break it down in a very specific way though, and it may be helpful when we can like take a few minutes to I can kind of like lay this out, at least how it makes sense to me. So I have this kind of like 3-prong approach. So I have this thing that are called benchmarks. We would see those as goals. But a benchmark is not like an end all be all. I finished the race now. I am done. Like give me a gold medal and I go home now and do something else. A benchmark is I've done this thing and now I set a new benchmark. So we're constantly moving. So just to make a gym analogy, a benchmark may be able to bench press 405. Okay, cool. That's your benchmark. You're not like done lifting weights now. And when I was a martial artist, a lot of people would be like, oh, I want to get my black belt and then be done. That's not, in my opinion, really like the reason to do martial arts. It should be to, center your mind and body, be dangerous, but safe. Be both safe and dangerous. And then being able to, protect yourself and your loved ones. That's not something that you ever stop doing. So that's a benchmark. How do you know what benchmarks you should go towards? I call this a trajectory. So your trajectory is like to know like what is a good benchmark to move towards. And so that will be how you orient yourself to space and time. Your trajectory, and this is, I like spaceships. It just is like, makes sense to me. I'm a sci-fi guy. So if you're in a spaceship, you can change your trajectory to then line yourself up with a series of benchmarks. And sometimes that trajectory, you may like go, and loop around different areas. And so you will change that trajectory, but that's how you know how to actually make good choices in your life. You then have a third thing here called velocity. So velocity is the actual speed or the momentum in which you are moving. And you have to then understand that life requires energy and that when you hit these benchmarks, hopefully you are also accumulating energy as well. But if your expenditure is greater than what you are receiving or generating inside of yourself, you're going to run out of steam. You're going to burn out. And so when you have all three of these things in balance, your benchmarks, your trajectory, you can also call direction too, and then also your velocity, and you have that in a good healthy balance, you can go like infinity. And I think that that's kind of more of like how the human spirit and the transcendental spirit actually operates, where we're currently having a very human, like lifetime. I'm in a human body. And that's a temporary state though. Like I'm not going to be human forever. Thank God. I'm actually kind of like ready to transcend, right? I'm enjoying myself, but that will then be something else. There's going to be something other than that, depending on your spiritual beliefs, what that is kind of up for debate. But at least right now, while we're human, that's why I call it human excellence. I try to help people and I try to embody this myself. What does being excellent for you look like? What are your benchmarks? What is your desired direction? What is your desired velocity? How fast do you want to be moving?
Wow. Yeah. So it's kind of measuring where you were to where you want to go, and then the rate of change and like consistency almost. And then you said the direction part.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It sounds like when most people come to you, it's obvious that they don't feel good exactly where they're at and they want to go somewhere further.
Mhm.
Do you ever have cases where people come to you and you uncover that the reason why they want to go further is because of a trauma, because of an old belief, because of insecurity? And how do you deal with that? Like, what is that?
Oh, I think it's usually always, like, I don't know. I really like Gabor Mate. So he's one of the leading trauma experts. He wrote a great book called The Myth of Normal, basically stating that everyone is traumatized now. Our society is inherently traumatic. Like, congratulations, you're traumatized. If you are born in this era, you're traumatized. May not be capital T trauma, and you may not have PTSD or CPTSD or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, but you have trauma. Because of that, you've got stuff you can work on. And so we can see this as a prison or a prison planet, or we can see this as this like a glorious opportunity to work on ourselves and better ourselves. Sometimes it does feel like a prison when we look at like the whole Epstein situation and child abuse and all these crazy ass wars and all over the place. And I mean, it's just there's like so much, and it can feel very traumatic and feel very much like a prison. Or we can then try to take a deep breath. That's usually when our velocity is a little too high. We're not going, in a kind of measured, slow, mindful, pace, where we can slow down and then actually move in a more healthy way and understand, okay, what in my past or in me, what wounds do I have that's being triggered by my environment? And so if we think about like the Epstein situation, it seems like we are ruled by a, oligarchy or a ruling class that, feasts off of the, blood and, innocence of small children. And we pay them tax dollars and they seem to run basically everything. That's very scary, right? And so that will then trigger times in our past when we've felt very afraid in the past. And so when we then think about those things, okay, how can I now as an adult meet what seems to be the most heinous and horrible thing that I can conceive of? Institutionalized, basically, like, I mean, I don't want to like trigger issue, but like go read those files, man. That's pretty fucking bad. How can we as men and women show up powerfully without falling prey to our own fears? And what does it bring up in us from the past, and how can we move forward in an effective way? So a lot of people, it is both they're traumatized, in their past, but they also just look at the world and see the inherent like issue there and don't necessarily know how to like do good.
Got you. So it's whether or not it's big T or little t trauma, big T being some kind of like major catastrophic event, sexual assault, something like very significant, noticeable. And then micro T, something that is more benign. You don't even notice it day to day, but it's happening and it's adding up and it's festering in your system.
Yeah.
So if you're saying everyone is traumatized, what is something that people should be doing? Like, what are you coaching people on a regular basis to be doing to untraumatize themselves or to release whatever it is in their body? Because it sounds like you cover very interesting the mind and the body with the nervous system as well. So it sounds like you have a really good probably process. What does that look like? Is there like a framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the Stone Protocol, I have a bunch of different meditations, and what works for me is going to, most likely have some sort of, cross-reference for other people too. But there are people for thousands of years have been trying to calm their nervous system and actually like show up in a healthy way. I have a background in Buddhist meditation and yoga and martial arts, and so a lot of what I do is influenced by that. So I have a very, I think well-established heart-centering meditation in which I focus on the energetic field of one's heart, which is measured by the Heart Math Institute. It's very cool. I bring that energy up and down the central channel. We can like throw cool Sanskrit words at this, like the Sushumna Nadi and like chakras and all sorts of fun stuff. And I'm covered in Sanskrit, so like that's fun for me. But it doesn't need to be Sanskrit. It doesn't need to be mystic Christian. It doesn't need to be Kabbalah or any of these things. Like we can actually not strip it down, but understand kind of what we're doing, and then allow these traditions to be just that if we want, or we can dive in deep. So there's a lot of really great options. For me though, it's coming back to oneself, really embodying the body and being like, you know what? I'm here. I've decided to not kill myself, right? So I'm going to be here, might as well show it fully. What does that look like? Let me really embody my body, like really be present for my central nervous system. And that for me involves going to the gym and lifting weights. So used to do a lot of martial arts, used to do a lot of yoga, and I love lifting weights. It's my second favorite activity, other another one that we can all probably, like guess what it is, right? And so going to the gym is fantastic. And so that to me is yoga. It's yoking the mind and body. And so I'm connecting my brain to the rest of my body, but I start with the heart first, because whenever I lose sight of myself personally, whenever I lose sight of that heart connection, my life just is not as happy, joyous. I'm usually not as kind. The normal smile on my 9-year-old daughter's face, if I'm not connected to my heart, her smile is not as bright because I'm not shining love as brightly or as strongly out into my environment, which is literally measurable by the Heart Math Institute.
Wow. Did you say yoga as in like yoked and then yoga, like yoga?
Yeah, it's yoked yoga. Yeah, so yoga just means to yoke, like a kind of like a a cart and a horse, or like the yoke on a bull. And so that's the root word for, the Proto-European, Sanskrit terminology. So we are yoking our mind to our body, literally. And bodybuilding, there's there's this dude here in Boulder, his name is the Iron Yogi. I think he talks about this. I've never actually taken a class with him, but he and I, like, when we're at the gym, we like say hi and talk a bit. There's a couple other people that kind of view weightlifting this way, but bodybuilding is actually, and I like don't get on stage and I'm like, I'm not a bodybuilder, but I follow a lot of those techniques because it's muscle mind coordination and isolation. So when you are just working on just your bicep, right bicep or isomorphic, doesn't really matter. You are connecting your central nervous system to one part of your body. And it's very similar to holding a yoga pose. It also happens to produce, muscle hypertrophy and, protein muscle synthesis. So you then build muscle, which is unarguably one of the best things you can do for longevity. And so, like, it has the added benefit of, I think, looking good, but certainly making you feel good and being very healthy. So that's a huge plus. And so when your spiritual practice allows you to be like a strong, capable male, like, or female, like, that sounds great to me. So that's one of the things that I highly encourage people to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So, if there was a daily protocol you would recommend them to work out, is it that simple? Is just lifting, like, because a lot of people go to lift weights. Does that mean everyone's free of trauma though? Because I feel like
I think that it's a multifaceted approach, and that lifting weights is definitely not like the panacea. But we have to, I think, really embody our emotions in a healthy way. And so when we go to the gym and lift weights, it's a great way to socialize. It's a great way to really get embodied, move that energy out, burn out catecholamines, burn out stress hormones like cortisol. And then also like go to a coach, talk to a coach, be in a men's group, and also meditate, also sit in stillness too. We don't necessarily only want to have our body mind centering practice be one of movement, but then really look at what's coming up. I use the system, I use several, but internal family systems. I don't know if you're familiar, developed by Richard Schwartz. Absolutely fantastic. I've done trainings with him and a couple of his contemporaries. One of my favorite books is actually called The Others Within Us. I don't remember the author of that right now. It'll come to me in a little bit. And this is basically parts work. So understanding that we are a multifaceted creature, that also interacts with other entities. And sometimes those entities can influence us in like very spiritual, energetic ways. And there are then things that we can do about that. And then that's where we then kind of move into some of this, psychedelic healing and psychospiritual healing.
what does it look like when you start diving into? Because from understanding there's like entities, for example, like how do we move into that like psychedelic work to understand and kind of ground all of this? Like, what is that?
Yeah. It's super complicated and you got to be really careful. So our sensory perceptions, we experience what, like 0.000, who knows how many zeros, 1% of manifest reality. And so if you kind of take a look at, the universe from a wider lens or a wider perspective, there's a lot of like really interesting stuff occurring that we don't perceive on a day-to-day basis. And if you read any sacred text from any culture at any time on planet Earth, they talk about beings. And there are many, many, many that are honestly like very scary. Like they're not great. It's, like people, there are good ones and bad ones. And so when you approach the universe from this kind of expanded perception, you can kind of, draw correlations that there are most likely benevolent entities that want to help us and malevolent entities that very much are parasitic and want to prey on us. And some people believe that this planet itself is currently infested by entities of the negative variety. And that's why I'm stoked to have conversations with people like you who are trying to make the world a better and brighter place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So is this where your occultist background kind of comes into?
This is it, bro. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tell me more about like where did this all begin? What is like how do you bring this into your work now? Also,
yeah. So occultism is it's kind of it's an interesting like kind of catch-all word. Just like means like hidden, like that which is hidden. And it's the same concept of like darkness in Buddhism. Like darkness is like this, like you just can't see, And so a lot of, I think, the truth of our world has been hidden from us by just like general population. So if you look back in ancient Egypt, There, in my opinion, there is no way that humans built those pyramids. Like the square root of, like pi is embedded into them. There's like the speed of light on like it's not a thing that humans, as we have been force fed history, that humans, one, could do, or two, had the mathematical understanding. There's another stone, there's these megalithic rocks that we as humans now, with all of our technology in 2026, physically can't move, but we can't move them. So like for someone to then try to convince me as a 41-year-old male who is very intelligent, no, they did that with like sand and sticks and like ramps. It's like, bro, like I have trouble coordinating people to do like a pickup soccer game. Like you think you're going to build like we can't even actually build these things now. So there is, in my opinion, a lot of the truth has been hidden. So an occultist is someone who wants to try to unveil or bring light to those dark places and to those hidden places, and then hopefully share that with other people in a loving way. Once you kind of like go down those paths, though, some of them are kind of dark. So like on Epstein Island, they had like temples there. Who was the temple to? That's up for debate. Those files have been redacted. The FBI doesn't want us to see that. And so when we think of, okay, what can we do as people who want to be philosophers or lovers of truth, we then need to explore those parts of our society that have been hidden from us.
Whoa. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's one of the challenging things, like people want to change and transform and live a bit in a better world, all of these things. But when any new information comes out that makes them feel uncomfortable, I feel like a lot of people kind of shrivel back and they want to go back. They're like, oh, I don't want to know this anymore. This is too much. A
Yeah.
lot of people finding out the Epstein stuff, for example, whether like the validity and how much of it is true and what's missing from it, whatever, a lot of people were shocked, and they kind of want to unlearn that information because it's kind of so many conspiracy theorists were proven right after that,
Yeah.
and so many people were calling these people crazy. And now you kind of look at all the other conspiracies, and you're like, wait, if now one of the craziest conspiracies is true, how much of the rest is true?
Yeah, and what was shown in those files is actually so much worse than what most reasonably minded conspiracy theorists thought, right? And it's so much worse, and that's what hasn't been either deleted outright or redacted. So it makes you wonder what has been redacted and what has been deleted. If you look at, there's a period, I believe it's around 2009 to 2011, so preceding 9/11. There's another great podcaster showed an infographic for this. People can go Google it, but it'll show like the actual Epstein files. There's a huge missing section during that 2-year period, basically the 2 years leading up to 9/11. There are other things happening then too, including the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and there was a very highly contested election where I believe, I don't remember exactly who was the person who was trying to get elected, but it was Clinton who got it, is my understanding, if memory serves. The reason I bring this up, there is a lot that is also not there, right? And so what is there is terrible and very scary. And so I think we as general population like need to be having these conversations and then understand like what are some of the underlying issues there. So I can throw like one of the, I think, kind of cool conspiracy theories around this. So in the Book of Giants, I don't know if you're familiar with the Mesopotamian, excuse me. So there's the Mesopotamian religion where you have the Anunnaki and other folks like that. You then have the Dead Sea Scrolls. So within the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and several other very interesting texts. In the Book of Giants, they list the actual giants. Goliath, from David and Goliath is listed in there. He's listed as one of the small ones, which he was. I think he was like only like 9 feet tall, which for these guys is not much. Some of the actual giants were supposedly ginormous. One of the giants that was listed was Gilgamesh. So when we think of the Epic of Gilgamesh, he's listed in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the oldest surviving stories, as this like huge fucking dude. He's like one of like there's statues of this guy. He's holding not like a house cat, an actual tiger, like it's a small kitty, right? Like I have a cat at home, and he's holding it like that. And it's very clearly outlined in the Epic of Gilgamesh. During this time period before the war in Iraq, they supposedly found the actual burial location of Gilgamesh. So kind of like when they find like King Tut's tomb, like, oh shit, we found where this dude was buried. Apparently they found that guy. And Saddam Hussein was talking about it. We then instantly go into a war in this area, and then United States forces go in and sequester stuff, one, pilfer all of their museum stuff, they already have their artifacts, and then lock down these sites. Now we get into a whole, all this business with Book of Enoch and UFOs and UAPs, and what even a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago was a taboo subject. Not everyone, occultists were talking about this stuff, but now this is like, people are like, oh shit, there's validity to this. Like, what the fuck's going on, and what is the government not telling us, and how then can we show up in healthy ways?
In your mind, what's like a healthy way to show up to? Because there's so much information that we cannot validate like confidently, right? Where everyone's like, this is the fact zone. It's not like the Epstein files where it's like, and even that, some people are like, maybe this is like some kind of just mask over our heads just so that we don't see what they really want to see. Like there's so many even more theories on top of that. What's a healthy way to show up now? What's your opinion on it?
Man, sometimes for me, like to not get overwhelmed, I gotta go to the gym and just lift weights. not to be escapist about it, but like I think taking really, how I view it is through the lens of my coaching program. Okay, what are my benchmarks, right? My ultimate benchmark, what I would like to do as Lightstone, is to help end child predation on planet Earth. So people, entities, I don't give a shit. It could be like an insect, doesn't matter to me. Although apparently they're insectoids. They were talked about on Fox News as one of the alien races. There's 4 that they discussed on Fox News and ESPN. Crazy. I don't care who's doing it. Anyone who is being a predator towards children, human children, I would like to help put a stop to that. I do it through coaching of usually, helping adults who were at one point, preyed upon. And so that is my long-term benchmark, but I then have to roll that back into small benchmarks. And then it's, I think, a matter of understanding, okay, how much velocity do I have? So what can I do with my available use resources? I have only so much energy in the day, only so much, financial resources, only so much, cognitive power, only so much willpower, only so much tolerance to be able to read through those Epstein files before I start to just start fucking crying because of what they're talking about. Like graphic depiction of sexual abuse of children for fun. Like these guys are like loving life doing this. Crazy. And so I then have to make a plan for myself. That's the trajectory. Okay, what do I want to accomplish today? What do I want to accomplish tomorrow? Who do I want to surround myself with? Who are going to ally themselves with me, at least in theory. Their goal doesn't have to be the same as mine, but we're moving like a flock towards this ultimate goal of hopefully bringing love and light to planet Earth. What's their psycho-spiritual orientation? Do we have at least like an ethical foundation together? I have friends who are Christian. I have friends who are Jewish. I have friends who are witches. I have friends who are, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn folks. But if they have that same like simpatico in their heart with me, then I can at least be allied with them in this, in this mission on planet Earth. That's what I try to do, and particularly not get overwhelmed, because I think that is probably what, I don't want to call them the enemies, but whatever is, preying upon folks, they would like for you to just be confused and overwhelmed. So you're in a state of fear and stasis.
Yeah, it's when I hear all of this, it is overwhelming, man. It's but I think this is my perspective on it.
Yeah, please share.
This is information that we're hearing now, but if realistically the entire world at any given time, there's someone who's experiencing some kind of suffering, some kind of this is constantly around the clock. And if we just only focus on that part of life, I think it's really depressing. And
Yeah.
it's not, and it's not that I don't want to look at it, but I think that we need to focus on like, okay, what can we do? Like almost be like action oriented to
Mhm.
do whatever we can on a regular basis to make things better to the best of our ability every single day. And like, I think that in itself that's a task, it's for many people, instead of just completely disconnecting from it, it's doing something, at the end of the day. Um,
Joyful. Yeah. Be the end game you want to see. And so for me, it's like live a joyful life. So I'll go play pinball with my daughter. She loves pinball. So we'll go to, we've got 3 to 4 different pinball arcades here in the Boulder area that we'll go to. We usually go once a week. So we'll do that. I'll go on a walk. I'll hang out with friends. And so to try and again, I think of like field dynamics. Like I am an energy field, literally. You can measure this. And if I can have my vibration in my heart be net positive, I'm making a difference, and I'm then self-sustaining. I then can actually exist in this very negative environment. I was walking here in Boulder, just walking to the studio. There's sprinklers going. It's like 70 something degrees, and it's like I'm thinking like, wow, like it is so sickeningly beautiful here, like absurdly so. And so it's how can we appreciate that beauty that's all around us, and then also acknowledge the darkness or the confusion of, what would you say, like rampant abuse, but then also still appreciate the beauty of it. And so I, took a moment and I looked at the mountains here at the Flatirons, and I just enjoyed, like, there's like a little misting, there's like literal little rainbows from from the sprinklers. And it's just like, God, like that's so cool. Yeah. So I try to, as you're saying, try to embrace joy.
yeah, no, 100%. I think at the end of the day, we cannot spread joy and love if we don't have any joy and love ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not sitting there at least feeling it in that moment. Like, how can you spread it to anyone else? You can't really, I can't really show up to you and be like, be happier. Like I can't, it just doesn't make sense. It just, you won't resonate with it.
Yeah.
Since we're talking this is like very Gnostic, very like you said, occult information. There are a lot of people in the spiritual community, I found, that they really believe that if we believe in something, that gives it power. And if we believe in positivity, goodness, light, those things, that in itself can manifest a whole new world of positivity.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about that with your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's an important thing to be mindful of. There's a concept, it's called spiritual bypassing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So I recently injured my finger, and so I had a completely torn tendon here in my middle finger, and a good friend of mine, bless her heart, she's like, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this tendon is fused. The doctor is like kind of going back and forth. He's being conservative on it. She's like, if you just like aren't available for that to be fused, it won't be fused. I'm like, well, like, I think that positive mental attitude, which I have, I still do my finger exercises, and like the doctor's very happy with how it healed, but like, I think I'm going to have to get another surgery. And so, yes, mind over matter. Absolutely. Like I am all about that. And sometimes like there are life circumstances that just exist. And I don't know if we can necessarily as humans will them out of existence. And I think, can kind of brush up against this idea of turning a blind eye to the reality of our world. And I think a lot of people, particularly in our Western civilization, who like in comparison to people who live in like third world countries and like really adverse conditions, and there's still like horrible trauma here too, but at least on the surface it looks great. It'd be like, like, my life's great, things are okay, and like, yeah, I know we pay 40% taxes to pedophiles, but it's not that big of a deal. And I know there's been no arrests, but I don't know, whatever, the government will figure it out. And you're like, well, I don't know if that's actually true. I think we actually have to do something about it. And so I think that it is both like being aware that something is happening that you don't necessarily like, and then making a plan to actually deal with it. And I don't think that you can just kind of like, I don't know, like kumbaya it out of existence. A good example of this is Tibetan Buddhism. So the Tibetan Buddhists fantastic meditators. I went to Naropa University, which is inspired by Tibetan Buddhism. China came in and just like wiped them out. They're like, nope, you're done now. Like, sorry, Dalai Lama. like all your temples are belong to us, and we're actually going to kill all of you. And it was like wholesale slaughter. And it wasn't on behalf of the Tibetans any lack of like spiritual technology or spiritual acumen that they had. They were fantastic meditators. I've meditated. I've lived in several monasteries and trained with many of them. They still got slaughtered. And so there's like the mass of reality has mass. And I think that we need to respect that mass and also then show up powerfully, not necessarily to combat it, but at least to deal with it in a healthy and effective way based on whatever our goals are. I'm curious your thoughts, though. It's a great question.
Yeah, I feel like there's doing whatever we feel has a result. That is how I see things. Do we see that doing this is netting out what we actually want to see? Is it having a direct effect? And some of it on a spiritual plane, at least from my understanding of it, it's hard for me to actually see what is actually happening when people do these meditations and do these manifestations, all these things. However, I do believe in manifestation, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do believe that people have an effect on their outward reality. Whether or not that means that I can lock myself in this room and just
Right.
meditate and expect that in the next 10 years, the world will be completely different without me doing anything at all. It could,
Right.
but it's not because I did, like, it's because other people were doing stuff,
Right.
that to make it happen, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my stance is just when we are doing all this manifestation, it's things that are outside of our control. And that's maybe 1% of what we do. But the other half is us waking up every day and doing something. And that's it's part of life. It's like, wow, it's how we live, it's like
Mm-hmm.
interacting with each other, doing things, going out and building something, being creative, sharing our voice, all of those things. I feel like that's all part of, I like to call it a game. It's all part of the game. And there's multiple layers to the game. And a lot of people are just living on layer 1, layer 2, and they're very caught up in the matrix. And then when you start to widen your view and open up your mind, more and more begins to be exposed, and it creates more and more complexity. It's almost overwhelming, honestly. But maybe people graduate to that level to some degree of like, okay, I'm ready to see more because like this is no longer interesting anymore. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
I agree with you. And I think you can be like a level 3 on one aspect of the game and a level 10 on another aspect. And so, people like certain business people, gosh, they just like seem to just have this uncanny ability to make money. And they also, many of them have this uncanny ability to be miserable. And I'm not saying that money makes people miserable, but it's like they've figured one thing out, but they haven't figured another thing out. I think that elements of spirituality can be like that too. And if you think of just like vibrational physics, we are in this 3D, physical plane. That is just how like we're here now, right? And there are more, even more dense elements of physical matter. You go inside of a black hole, apparently it turns into a singularity, and we're not quite sure what happens there, but it's more dense than standard matter. And it's very hard to look at. Literally, that's why it's a black hole, right? And then there's higher vibrational energy, literally the electricity inside of our body in the synapses, right? And then if you can put them into various chakras. And so people who focus on that higher vibrational state, they can, have more of that energy. But if they can't braid that, literally weave that into 3D physical space and then do something here in 3D physical space, it's not that it's not like good or helpful or important, but like I see our bodies almost like we're like deep sea divers and we are like deep under the ocean in 3D physical matter, but like we are also the suit that we are, that's our body, but we are also the pilots, that's the energy. And we have to like balance out both of those things and leverage the suit to then do something here. It's kind of like if you want to like weld something underwater, if you don't move your hands, like you can have all the welding materials that you want and like know how to do it. But if you don't actually do it here in 3D, it's not going to get done. And you're not going to do that underwater welding.
Yeah, it reminds me of the saying, it's like praying to God to win the lottery, but never buying a lottery ticket.
There you go. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like you can ask for something that you don't have control over, yes, but you have to do the things that you do have control over to some degree to try to make it happen for yourself.
And maybe to a big degree, like maybe if the thing that you really want done is like a hard thing to do here, maybe you got to work real hard at it. And then how can you make that work, or that expenditure of effort, as you were saying, a joyful thing instead of a chore of like, oh my God, the world is a horrible place. I feel like shit, like, oh my God, all these children are suffering. That then can engender more of that dense negative energy instead. And you don't necessarily have to like be happy that the world's in a bad place, but like, I have an opportunity to actually make a difference here. I am aware enough to see that there is a problem. I have the capacity to do something about it. Like that actually could be relatively rare, in which case, wow, like I could either see it as duty or see it as an opportunity to make a difference. How lucky am I, or fortunate am I that I can actually do something, and then surround myself with other cool people that are doing that too. And that we're one of the good guys. I think about that a lot. Like when I look at some of these people, like I've had some clients that have like been through it. When I think about the people that hurt them, and the psychological and mental emotional state of the people that they would need to have to actually do some of this stuff, like, it's like horrible. Like I am so I'm so glad I'm not that person. You know what I mean? Like it could be much worse for us. And so we have this opportunity to actually be like on Team Love Light, which, like, I don't know, that's great for me. Like I'm very pumped about that.
Yeah. Since you mentioned Love Light, and that's how would you describe Team Love Light, and what's the other team? Just for the audience.
I think the other team is team. I'm real fucking confused and making a mess of everything for everybody, including themselves. Yeah, like,
because there is a separate camp that I've noticed that, so Team Love and Light is really focused on spreading positivity, focusing that, embodying that almost at all times, and staying in that energy as much as humanly possible. I'm over summarizing, but just for the sake of time. And then there's another camp that's really focused on like blending shadow and believing that we have to also embrace our shadows and not always be in this like positive mood.
Oh, cool. But you're not necessarily saying that those people are like straight up evil. They're just more of kind of like in like playing in the darkness.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's so many nuances to this.
Yeah.
I was just trying to lace into the different.
No. I see where you're going. I appreciate it. No, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think it depends on, so like I'm covered in Sanskrit, but I go to this church here. I don't go all the time, but I'm friends with the pastor. It's called The Well. I've had the guy on my podcast. He'd be a cool guest for you. His name is Matt Patrick. He's very Christian though, and he's Baptist. And I do not agree with everything that they say. It's so funny. Whenever I mention his name, I always say that. And he's like, "Light, why do you always say that?" See, because it's a really great example of where, like, Matt, I love you like a brother, but I don't need to agree with everything that you believe in, and that's actually kind of the beauty there. And so for him, he armors himself, and, he calls the armor of Christ, and they are like fucking hard-line Baptist Christians. Let's say Armageddon or some sort of like natural apocalypse happens. Matt knows that he and I are on the same, whatever is going down, we're going to do it together. Okay. And we've made this commitment to each other. And I'm, again, covered in Sanskrit. I would consider myself Christian because I think that Christ was an amazing person. I do not think that Christ is the only way to love. I think that Christ found a very good path and then shared that with other people. But I don't think that Christ is the only way. Right. And that could be a difference that Matt and I have. Much like that, I'm friends with witches that do all sorts of very, odd, practices. And, there are archetypal energies or actual deities, potentially how you want to look at it, like Hecate. Hecate, I mean, I wouldn't want to piss her off. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the goddess Hecate, but arguably, one of the, primordial Olympian deities that Zeus did not kill, one of the Titans. And for whatever reason, according to lore and mythology, Zeus didn't kill that one. I mean, but this is like, whether or not these things exist in the way that people have written about them, I'm not really quite sure, because I'm very human and my pineal gland is calcified just like everybody else's. So I don't see this shit as much as I would like to. My point is that I have friends that do rituals towards with these deities. I think the way to differentiate someone who is good or bad is, what is their intention, right? So what's the intention for someone armoring themselves in the armor of Christ? What is the intention of someone, praying to a deity like Hecate? Now, if they're praying to Hecate because they're trying to curse someone, like a Satanist, someone part of the satanic church, which apparently they do all the time, yeah, I would say that's evil and bad. That's not on my team. I don't care if you're love, light, shadow, or, anything. If your intent is to cause ill towards someone else, that's your intention. That's not good. I don't like that. I don't want to be anything part of that. If your intention is good, you can still maybe do ill, do bad, but at least those intentions are good. And then it's a matter of confusion. But when you look at those emails in the Jeffrey Epstein cases, their intention was to harm small children. And then to kill people that were going to prevent them from doing that. That's just straight evil, and I don't care if, you put a pentagram on you or whatever. I mean, but if your intention is to hurt people, ritualistically or otherwise, that's just team evil, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all come to this consensus of morality, and causing any kind of harm to anyone, any kind of non-consent is not okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that some people are just confused and maybe they have good intentions. What is maybe a myth or misinformation that you feel like that's out there that, from your understanding, your research, your experience, you want to just set the record straight because people are confused right now?
I think that people put far too much emphasis on authority having their best interest at heart. And so a lot of people want to trust the equivalent of big brother, big father. There's not really a strong matriarchal figure in our society, so there's no big mother really. But to trust the government, and even to trust certain spiritual leaders, that they have their subordinates' best intentions at heart. From what I have seen, I think that there are good people in the government. I think that they are few and far between, but it seems like the vast majority of people currently in positions of power, at least in our government, really don't have our best intentions at heart. And I think that are either controlled and manipulated through blackmail. I mean, it's very clear that Jeffrey Epstein was running a blackmail operation. Many people say for Mossad and or the CIA, and then using that to blackmail billionaires and other people of high value targets to get and control them. A lot of people then also believe that these were done through, organizations like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and others who had, defense contracts that many people say were from sequestered, traded and or downed UAP/UFO alien, architecture or spaceships, whatever the fuck you want to call these things. Couple years ago, you say stuff like that and people think you're crazy. The Pentagon is now releasing stuff now in 4K within this past week of these things. But people have been saying this for a very long time, and the people who have been talking about it have been murdered. And that's not okay. And so it's who's killing these people. And I think we're actually paying for it with our tax dollars. And so I think that people need to kind of really look around them. And to your point, I think it's uncomfortable for folks to say, gosh, this exists, but that uncomfortable truth is still truth. And so you have to make a decision. Do you want to be honest with yourself about what really appears to be true, even though it's uncomfortable? And if so, then you need to do something about it. You don't need to necessarily, table flip your whole life and, light your house on fire. But I think you do need to do something. Otherwise, you are just complicit to this, horrible psyop that we call our society.
Yeah, I think the crazy part is after that happened, everyone just kind of went back to life. And I'm making the assumptions I'm not monitoring everyone like the government is. No, just kidding. But
not joking though, but yeah.
but really, no. But going back to their regular routine of life, and they saw this on the news. They saw this information. It was mind blowing, and then and this is no judgment, but going back to just whatever your normal routine of watching Netflix, being on social media, going to a festival. I'm one of these people too, by the way. I went to a festival not too long ago because I want to have a life. I get it. But it's just shocking to me that we experience this. There's billions of people on Earth, and there's no movement that as far as I know, that was formed to try to enforce justice in some way. If this was someone else, if this wasn't the top people in the world. If this was some guy that did this, people would have like the ropes out and like
Yep.
social media campaigns, like all sorts of stuff. And it's really shocking to me. I don't try to talk about too many things that I don't have direct experience in, but like just witnessing this from a bystander perspective, it was really jarring. Like I want to talk about what should have happened or needs to happen in order for actual change to happen. Because otherwise, stuff like this is just going to keep, going in cycles.
I think people are so conditioned and overwhelmed. So FBI Director Kash Patel is a great example of this. So I've followed Kash Patel before he was, inaugurated in or voted in. I think he was appointed, whatever it was. And I think he's got to go through the Congress or Senate or whatever. I'm not a political science guy. But are you familiar with Kash Patel, the FBI Director? And it's okay if not.
No, I'm not.
No. Okay. So he's the FBI director. He started very like, we're going to uncover the truth, like Epstein files for days. This is before he was in. And like, we're going to tell, like, I'm your guy. I'm going to change the system. Once I'm FBI director, everything's going to change. And I truly believed that he believed that was possible, that he was one, that's intent, and that two, he could do it. Right? Okay. He becomes FBI director. There are memes on the internet. This guy, he's like this now. Like his eyes, it looks like this dude saw an alien, right? I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm also not saying that's not what happened, but something happened to this man. And he has gone up to Congress and to Senate being questioned about many things, including the Epstein files. And they're like, and he's on record saying the FBI, he's like reading, the FBI has no credible evidence that these, and he calls them young women. No, they're children, that these young women were trafficked to anyone other than Jeffrey Epstein. This is his official report. I mean, and then Congress passes all this stuff saying, no, we need to make these documents public. Pam Bondi then comes out saying there's nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. And then more stuff comes out. Pam Bondi was also, and was she Secretary General, I believe. She was then proven to be, lying and when she now has to go and she's about to be, have a deposition, she's then fired. Trump fires her. So she now doesn't have to talk about it anymore. And the new guy is just towing some new line. So people, like, when the people that you pay taxes to, right? This isn't like a Floyd situation of like some dude like dying in the street or like, whatever. Like these are the people who literally like control and own the largest standing army on the face of planet Earth, tell you there's nothing to see here. And you get a guy who's been put in this situation like Kash Patel as FBI director, like I am going to uncover the truth, and then he is like forced into whatever complicit dynamic he's in. He knows that's fucking bullshit. This is not a dumb dude. Like he's a smart man, right? And he's now like literally like this. You can look it up in the internet. His eyes, I don't know if they like electroshock therapy this guy. I don't even think so. I think they just literally said like, if you don't say this, we're gonna kill you. And he's like, well, I don't want to die. Might as well be at the right hand of the devil and try to steer it as best as I can on the inside, But I mean, there's also a non-zero reality here that like, I don't know, like some people believe that like fucking reptiles run our government from another planet or that they've been here the whole time. Like, I don't fucking know. But at this point, like the humans that we vote in go from being like very staunch advocates for truth and justice and get turned into something that is clearly not that.
Yeah. I'm going to say something a little bit uncomfortable with your statement. At this point, there is no information where I'm like, that's absolutely insane. Like everything that people tell me at this point, I'm like, there's a possibility. There's a possibility. Because I realize that the more I close my mind to things, I have now like, that's literally being closed-minded. Like I now just hear something and I'm like, what information do you have? Like I want to hear it out of curiosity. I can't prove it, but I'm not telling you that it's wrong or that's not true, because there's been so many times that I've thought this about something and I've been surprised.
It's crazy. Not, I mean, 9/11 being an inside job is one of the big ones. So that galvanized, like, I remember I was in high school when it happened. I'm 41. I think I was like a sophomore or junior in high school. We all thought it was some terrorist attack. It now is like, you look at the footage of this plane going into this building. It's bad CGI, right? There are first like witness accounts of people saying that they heard explosions below them and then explosions above them. The same with the Pentagon getting hit by a plane. It's like it's not. There's no debris. They found like the passport of like one of the hijackers like a block away, like totally unfired or whatever, like unexploded. Like it does. None of it makes any sense, right? And so it's like, what then do you do with that, right? It's like you either kind of just go back. It's almost like it's like people again think about like normal mammal response to things: fight, flight, or freeze. Or there's the fourth one, fawn, right? People just kind of glaze over and they're like, I still got to pay tax. Like I got to pay my car payment. I got to pick my kids up from school. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to like fight the government when they blow up our own buildings and blame Osama bin Laden, right? And it's like, I ain't saying Osama bin Laden's a nice guy. Like, I'm sure he had it coming, but like, it's all fucking like crazy. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do you then do? I mean, hopefully you have conversations with like-minded people, try to stabilize your nervous system, try to be a beacon of love and joy, and then slowly, like incrementally make positive change and expose corruption, confusion, and darkness. It's hard. And, also probably praying to benevolent entities that also, I believe, exist is probably a good idea too.
Yeah, it's at this point, the more that I'm around it, I don't speak on things I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That I don't have direct experience in. All I'm saying is it's have a healthy skepticism about things that you hear from government systems, especially ones that have a history of doing messed up stuff. I feel like this is just, I don't know why I have to even say this. If you know a country's history has a history of doing bad things to people, don't be surprised that they're doing it to you too,
Right.
at the end of the day. And I think that's the big takeaway is like, what do you do with that? It's have a healthy skepticism about what you hear, double check the sources, find out where it's coming from, find out what the incentive is for them to share this information, and see what you can, like you said, come back to how can we all come together as people and look out for each other. I think that
Yeah.
is the biggest thing is like, how do we all look out for each other and do something and pretend like the government doesn't even fucking exist anymore, and just like, how do we help each other
Right.
through this to get to the other side, wherever the other side is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I come back to is, if I think about like what is even the definition of spirituality, is believing in some sort of metaphysical spirit for the human body, right? Okay. So let's say that exists. How then can we have that spirit, whatever we are inside, metaphysically be positive and generative and shine? I can't help Kash Patel over in the White House or Pentagon, wherever his office is, probably the Pentagon, FBI, I don't know. I look in that man's eyes and I'm like, bro's seen some shit. Like, oh baby, right? But what I can do is be a beacon for myself. And so my nuclear family, do it for me, do it for my daughter, do it for my significant other, do it for my friends, do it for my colleagues, do it for you. Shine that light out. Try to be inspiring of love, light, beauty, truth, justice, goodness, right? And I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes all the time, but then take responsibility and try to be better. And I think that and maybe this is my own like neuroses of like, how do you make sense of like horror? But I think that if we literally emanate that love and light and positivity, that makes a difference. And I think that makes maybe more of a difference than we see, particularly when we align our actions to that. And sometimes that action can be going to the gym, so we then can, do a little bit extra work, right? Of really balancing our central nervous system so we can do more work in the world and face the world as it is without turning a blind eye.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I think for both of us, we're both coaches. We're both like, we try to help, right? And I think it all comes back to this piece, which is in order for people to have the most effectiveness, you gotta clean up what's going on with you on the inside, have the capacity, have the mindset to think outside the box, to be more courageous in your life, to see something bigger outside of what is being shown in front of you. And that is like one of the first things. Like I think I can only speak for myself, like going through this journey that I've been through in my career, my life. I was working the typical 9 to 5. I have found my way out, started doing coaching, started really expanding my mind. And the more I did that, I feel like the more you feel that you can do so much.
Mhm.
And I mean, I started a podcast. Like it's like all these things are things that a lot of people wouldn't do. But when you start doing this work, you do create more capacity. You do see greater potential. You do have more direction. And I feel like I don't want to say that I'm going in the right direction, someone else isn't, but I just feel that there is more action taking place in some format. And us just even speaking right now and talking about this, I'm the whole reason I think for me doing this podcast, and I'm assuming you too, is for someone else to hear this message, hear something that resonates with us, something that they can walk away with, something that makes them think and question whether or not, hey, maybe I should do something a little bit different about my life, about how I relate with people, about how I show up into the world. And that maybe is the start. Maybe that's already good enough, is just having that moment of thought and
Mhm.
walking out the door and talking to your neighbor and be like, hey, have you ever thought about what's been going on and or how we live our, and just having that conversation. And sometimes it takes one loose gear to fall out of a machine for the whole machine to kind of start falling apart so you can build something new again.
Yeah. 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 I totally agree with you. Yeah. And if we're not doing it for those reasons of joy and happiness, happiness is a charge word. I like the word joy. Then I think that we can lose sight of it, and then we just fall into despair. And I don't think that's helpful. Yeah. And it's not, not to say that there is I think the purpose of life is to co-create joy. That then is not a good purpose for me, at least. Yeah. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. One last question I would love to ask you, if you don't mind, Light.
Yeah.
We're talking about how it's been a little heavy, right? Like what the world that we see right now necessarily aren't in love with. What is the world that you would love to see? Like, what does that look like for you?
I would love, man, if I could like make one change, I would love for humans, entities, whatever, to be able to perceive intention as clearly and non-overwhelmingly as we can perceive light. So like there's here in the studio, there's 4 lights here. I can see them very clearly. They're not blinding me, they're helping me, right? So if we could perceive other people's intentions of why are you doing this thing? Why are you having this conversation, right? Why do you have a podcast? Why are you doing any of the things that you're doing? What would this do? If we could live in a more open and honest world around intentionality, that would then allow us to really show up and understanding. You talked before about that this is like a game. I agree with you. We would then be kind of like able to agree and consent if we want to play with these other people and if we want to pay tax dollars to the government. Technically, the government's working for us. We're paying them, right? But it's a little backwards right now, right? It's kind of feeling a little bit more like ancient Egypt of, the Egyptian slaves. And so if we could understand the intention of the government, that I think would be very helpful. So what does that look like? It's a world in which we actually have a higher degree of safety around our intentions and those we choose to co-create with. And I think that there would be a lot of people, entities, organizations, companies, potentially alien influences, demonic influences, probably not the angelic ones, their probably intentions are pretty good, who people would choose to not interact with. They'd say, no, thank you. And then I hope that there was some sort of ability for those entities, either on their own behalf or someone interceding upon their behalf, to then enforce consent and those boundaries. When someone said, no, thank you, I do not wish to be perpetrated against by you parasitic entity. The entity could be a corporation, doesn't matter. Someone to step in on and intercede upon their behalf. I would love to see that. The universe is a big place, and I think there's probably beings that can make that happen for us. And I don't know, the Christians are like waiting for a revelation of that to come. I'm not sure if that's how it's going to go, but that's what I'd like to see. Not necessarily their version of revelation, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I got.
No. I like it. At the end of the day, I also lean into uh, optimism is what I always, and that's why I like to close out these episodes with something like this because there's so many things that aren't right to us, right? But like, what would right look like? And once we know that in mind, what are some small steps that we can just take from here to get there? Like just baby steps. Like, what's one thing you can do that would
Be
make
really
that happen?
clear about your intentions. Be clear
Yeah,
about your intentions. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Light, thank you so much, man. This was, we dove, we dove into nervous system, to your coaching, your into spirituality, and then we ended up in kind of like this messy system that exists to some degree that's like underneath the surface. And I'm glad that you're well researched and you're able to bring it to the light. I have not done enough digging into this stuff, and it's interesting. So I appreciate you sharing that with like everyone watching, everyone listening. If other people want to learn more about what you do, your program, more about like what you're interested in, like where can they find you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at lightstone.media. I post clips from my podcast. I post stuff about peptides, stuff about meditation, stuff about fitness. And so again, that's lightstone.media. I think the link will be down probably in the show notes. And then my podcast is called The Stone Protocol. It's also the name of my website, stoneprotocol.com. And I think that I have the opportunity of now hosting you on my podcast right after that. So if people want to hear more of our conversation, in which I will be asking, I think, a bit more about your background and what has brought you to the unique place that you are in, that they can then hop on over and watch part two of this, this interaction between us over on the Stone Protocol podcast. And I have a bunch of other really cool guests, and we talk about things, anything from like biohacking to mysticism, to trauma healing. Usually it comes back to a lot. There's a lot of trauma healing of like, what can we do again, as you said, to kind of clean yourself out and show up, fully and healthily.
That's amazing. Yeah, can't wait to be on yours and definitely hop over there. I will probably promote the show on social media and in the show notes if you want to check it out. But until then, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Light, for joining us for the show. I really appreciate this conversation. Looking forward to talking to you again, man.
Yeah, you're right, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thanks.